Greetings, everybody. We'd like to start our next session. My name is Glennie, and I've had a long involvement in Siyaphumelela. The session today is going to be about reflecting a little on how we have built Siyaphumelela collaboratively and some of the big challenges that we will have to face as we move forward. So I would like to say, dear Siyaphumelela scholars, you are a bloody hard act to follow. We will do our best. Now, the mantra of this conference has become building, the two mantras have become building student success is everybody's business. And then if you go alone, you go fast, but if you go together, you go far. And I think this is also going to be reflected in our presentations today. So could we have, let me go next. The Siyaphumelela growth has been in a changing environment. We started in 2015. Sorry, can we have the slide, please? We started in 2015. And our first grant with just 5 partners went to 2020. After quite a lot of pressure that so many people wanted to start to join, but we only had money for 7 partners from 2020 to 2024. We had 7 partners, but we had 9 participant universities from around the country. And therefore, there began the Siyaphumelela network, as opposed to simply the Siyaphumelela project. From 2024, we moved, as you know, to the 20 partners and hope to continue this till 2027 at the very least. You'll see that previously we managed more than kind of 3 years, often 4 or 5, and that was because the dollar was strengthening so much in that time. Now we're not quite sure what's going to be happening. The dollar is falling. This has been a tumultuous period that Siyaphumelela has grown. The fees must fall was a tumultuous time for all of us, but it did lead to the NSFAS expansion, and that has had an amazing effect on the student body. We now have a changed profile of not the study body, but the student body. We now, in our universities in South Africa, reflect the population group of the country. And if you trace that back from 1994, it has been an amazing change. What it does mean is that there are lots more students who are from lower income families and who go to quintile 1 to quintile 3 students. This is a big change for some of the universities in South Africa. And then, of course, in this period, we had to endure COVID and all that meant. Some of the lessons that we learned, most of us, I think, just prefer to send COVID into the background as much as we can. So now we have, and you've seen these 20 institutions, I won't go through them, but we're really very proud of this breadth that Siyaphumelela has managed. And I think some of the remaining institutions are also keen to follow, and we'll have to find a way to ensure participation as much as possible. We have built on a common agenda all this time over the 10, 11 years that we've been going. So you can see from the very beginning, student-centered success. So it was always at the back of our minds that that is what we should be doing. Second was the equitable student success. We wanted to ensure that there were no equity gaps, particularly in regard to population group and importantly, as far as gender was concerned. Thirdly, and this was an important part of Siyaphumelela, is to ensure that we collect and use data. Then fourthly, that we should, using that data, get evidence-based student success efforts and student success practices. And then finally, and really importantly, the student voice in all that we do. I think testament today from the students has shown us how far we have moved in this regard. I think we were really slow to begin with. Our very first conference, we did have a panel of students. But what really has accelerated the student voice in Siyaphumelela was the development of the Dream Scholars, moving from having one Dream Scholar to now having many more, and many institutions are having Dream Scholars of their own, I think particularly Northwest University at different campuses. So that has been a huge growth. So we're not going to examine that issue anymore in thinking about building student success. We're going to go on to a range of other issues. What's happened here? Seems to be okay. Now, what we have done in this period is we've given substance to the common agenda, and we've done this collaboratively. From the early days where collaboration was quite hard amongst the 5 partners, I have to say they hid more than they shared. But that has changed dramatically over the time, and I think those initial partners have been now an example to others of how to share. But you'll see there that we've got different categories of evidence-based practices. I'm not going to go through them, but most of these have been built in collaboration with the institution. Some of them have been learning from Achieving the Dream or other institutions like Georgia State, the importance of the database, but many of them have arisen, these good practices, from the institutions who've been part of Siyaphumelela. Now, the architecture of Siyaphumelela is quite complex. It takes 2 slides to show it to you. I'm just going to go over it very quickly, but I think it's important just to notice. First of all, I think we should start with the resource and trusted partner, the Kresge Foundation. So Bill, I think we would like to pay tribute to you for all, not only for the resources that you have provided, but also for the insight and the partnership, walking alongside us every step of the way. So thank you to the Kresge Foundation. And when he's been needed, he's been there, your chairperson. The advisory committee up the top, what we've got as number 1 there, is our attempt to ensure that we engage with the key bodies in South Africa, and that as far as possible, their work informs ours and our work informs theirs. And increasingly, it's also meant that we've started to play much more of a role in ensuring that different players in South Africa are actually collaborating as they ought to be doing. The last conversation we had, it did seem as if some of the bodies who should be talking to each other daily were not, and they lacked, in fact, the opportunity Siyaphumelela provided for them to talk together. And then there is the backbone organization, number 2 there. And I would like, this is a very important role that SADI has played. So SADI is an organization, it's an NGO that's been going for the last 30 years. Siyaphumelela isn't the only thing that SADI does. It has a number of other key interventions, and Innocent can tell you all about them, some of them right at the other end of the spectrum in early childhood development. But SADI was the backbone, and this meant that it really needed to ensure that the whole edifice moved forward in a collaborative way. And you can see all the different things that SADI is meant to be doing, including organizing this conference, which has grown from about 100, and then we got very excited when we got to 180, and then 250, and now 450. Do we want to grow any more? We better decide that. We have convening meetings twice a year in which we meet with all the institutions and their leads, and we have regional meetings as well, in which the local universities can participate. And in fact, people who are not, or universities who are not Siyaphumelela members may actually come to those events that are organized. And this aspect has been led for most of past History of Siyaphumelela by Alan Amory, and I also want to pay tribute to Alan for his work, not only in leading at that stage, but also providing some of the technological infrastructure that makes sure that Siyaphumelela comes together. So thank you, Alan. So if we continue looking at this diagram, you will also see that right at the bottom are all the services. And I've already shown you this, that particular part of the screen. How do these things actually happen, these efforts that we look at collaboratively? Well, generally it starts at a work stream. And often in our conference, we have identified areas where we think we should be moving, and then have started a work stream, usually where all the institutions are involved, and then that work stream starts to come up with a program of action. In item 4, you can see all of what those work streams actually are. Struggling to remember which button to push. This is the bottom half of the architecture, where I've repeated the practices again at the top, but obviously really importantly are the institutions, the institutional leads, the partners, where we are proud to say that we now have 20 partners instead of the 5 that we started with. And then at the very bottom, we've highlighted in number 7, a key service that Siyaphumelela offers, and that is the coaches service. And one of our panelists, Ogude, will be speaking a little bit about that particular service. So the panelists that we have there, we can start with Gugu, who's sitting over here, Lis Lange, who is going to be online. She's in Cape Town. She needed to be there at the moment, but her experience is invaluable. Matete Madiba, Francois Strydom, and Nthabiseng Ogude. Altogether, this team has at least 30 years of Siyaphumelela, 60 years of Siyaphumelela experience. That wasn't to make them feel young or old, but just got a lot to offer. I'm going to be asking them various questions, some of the questions, and speak to trying to build Siyaphumelela in a collaborative manner. And the first issue that I'm going to be looking at is leading and managing student success work in a student-centered manner. And I'm going to be asking Lis Lange and Matete Madiba to speak briefly about this matter. If Liz is there, could we switch to her? If that's not possible, that's switching to me. Let me just tell you a bit about Lis Lange, because she's had extraordinary experience in Siyaphumelela. She was the institutional lead at the University of the Free State. She was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor to whom the institutional lead reported at the University of Cape Town as they started their work, and now she's been instrumental in getting the work going at the University of Stellenbosch. So Liz, if you could respond to that issue about leading and managing.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. In order to control my time, Jenny, I wrote this thing, so and I'm going to read it. It's something we have learned in doing this work is that leadership requires the ability to hold together the messiness, contradiction, and scrambling which are involved in leading the university as a collective, negotiating support and resistance, commitment and indifference in an often charged environment. The most difficult part has always been to hold to the notion that education is a political act, and that at the same time, universities have a limited capacity to influence the structural reality that produces injustice. The great challenge still is to balance the urgency for solutions and evidence with the integration of sociological and political perspectives that problematize the work. In 3 decades of change in higher education and retheorization, from academic development to neoliberal indicators to AI-driven student support, the need that keeps on being pushed is that we need to move the limits of what the university is and what it is responsible for. We push our own boundaries by refusing to fix students to fit the university and fixing the university to work with our students as social beings and agents of change. In this regard, the work of changing culture has required and still does, battling in different fronts, including with ourselves, to keep redefining how we understand students, how we theorize development, how we generate knowledge for and of transformation, how we deal with and address intergenerational trauma at the systemic level. This demands the implementation of a complex mix of centralized and decentralized moves, management structures and communication strategies, budgetary decisions and bold moves, and sometimes being able to deal with mistakes. Leadership for change requires presence in the trenches. It needs to combine the formal governance of the university with the generative power of less formal spaces of creativity and frankness. It needs to listen to students and facilitate their participation in processes of thinking and decision-making, and we have made great progress in this area. The main message over the last decade has been one of responsibility and accountability pitched across the whole university community. From the top executive to the gardener, we are all responsible for student success. We are all responsible to understand and to act out that success is not only to pass and graduate, but to be recognized for who you are, how you think, what you can do. To move the proverbial needle of student success means to move the university as a system and to keep challenging our readings of the reality within which we operate, our notions of what the academic project entails, and what the role of the university is in bringing about endlessly delayed social justice. That's all for me, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liz. If we could move on to Matete, who also has experience at a couple of universities, starting at the University of Pretoria and now at UWC.
Thank you. Just thinking about where we come from those early days when a movement of this size and nature was conceptualized to where we are today, it really gives me great joy. And one of the things that makes me to be so happy is that in this language of student success that we are now acquiring and getting to master with its terminology and vocabulary, we are talking integration, we are talking collaboration. At UWC, we are even talking interdependence. And the vocabulary is also being driven by talking about data. We are no longer just talking about, big institutional data in reports that go to the DHET and maybe to CHE when they ask for it. We are now saying big institutional data speak to us. It is the state of affairs as far as student success is concerned. So we are not just going to compile and send over to those authorities, but we are going to use it. And these are the big rates that should inform what we are doing. When we talk about interventions, we shouldn't just look for what is fashionable, what is exciting, but look at the data and let the data help us design offerings that will bring the change and the impact that we need. So student success is really refining our thinking and helping us to forge forward, to really attend to what matters in higher education. And we can now talk about impact and know how to measure it. We can talk about holistic student success and know what we are referring to and be able to look at the nuances, learn from each other, and learn, inside our institutions nationally, but also across and overseas, and be able to do that which matters, from looking into the data, into the offerings, and really shifting the needle in terms of making sure that the big rates, persistence, completion on time, progression, and all of those good rates really change to the better in our institutions.
Thank you. We're now going to move on from leadership to something that requires huge leadership, which is ensuring on the one hand that the necessary data is available, and on the other hand that it is used effectively. And I would like to ask Francois to start on that issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And to everybody that's played such a fantastic role in us being here. So in terms of data, if you think across many levels, it becomes very, very complex, like a bit of a spaghetti bowl. So I went for 5 principles, also because Jenny is extremely strict about the 4 minutes, right? Principle number 1, I actually wrote this morning when the scholars were, I couldn't believe that it wasn't my one, but I think the scholars highlighted that. Data is someone's voice. It's sacred. And if you need a memory, just think of the scholars who talked. So when you see that little number, that is a person. Principle 2, my staff tease me about this, but this is a motto that CTL has lived by. If you do not have data, it did not happen. So design intentionally. So if we don't have the videos of the scholars, they weren't here, right? 3, if people do not talk to each other, and this is to leadership, neither does their data. Get people talking, build and maintain relationships, right? 4, sharing data in a complex organization like a university is an act of trust and vulnerability. Therefore, as a leader and manager, fight for safe spaces while creating a culture of accountability. And the 5th one, the more you share your data, Zoe, listen to this. The more you share your data, your voice, the better the data becomes, the functions become, and everybody becomes, because we are connecting as human beings. That's it.
Thank you. Could we now ask for Liz to come into the picture, please? Liz is going to follow on this question about ensuring that the data is there and is used.
Thank you. Thank you, Francois. That was fantastic. We live at a time of willful ignorance at global level, a time of fake news, post-truths, and echo chambers of self-congratulation. At much smaller scale, universities the world all over are struggling to know themselves and to think about themselves. Data is a necessary component of introspection, but it is far from being neutral or innocent. Data is susceptible of manipulation. I have often heard ridiculous and deeply reactionary arguments about student success rates, all based on data. In this context, our understanding of data can not only be technical, but conceptual and multidisciplinary. Definitions, interpretations of data, parameters of data collection are not only a matter of evidence for decision-making. Data becomes a tool in the process of institutional change. We have seen in this decade that there is a will to change the conversation, and when this happens, evidence becomes the mirror we put to the university to shake up self-satisfaction, identify fractures, and identify failures in our systems. We have seen during these years that data can make disengaged senates sit up and enter the conversation, asking how qualitative research could deepen our stats, how different disciplines and fields of knowledge can contribute to less linear interpretations of progress and success. Institutional research, in its broadest understanding, has been resetting the conversation about the student success, not only as a systemic issue, but also as part of university social responsibility. In this sense, university leadership has a crucial role to play, not only in using data for decision-making, but to model in the presentation of their thinking an analysis of data that it is moral and it is critically engaged with our social reality. That's from me, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so data, and thank you for both of those contributions about the subtlety and the vulnerability of data. But it is essential in our building an evidence-based student success practices institutionally and nationally. I'm going to call upon Gugu at this stage, who has led a Siyaphumelela, the development of a Siyaphumelela service, and that service has now become a national service accredited. So, Gugu.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thanks again for the opportunity to serve on this panel. So, needless to say, as you can see, my ripped jeans, building student success results in grazed knees.
And they don't pay you enough.
But this is something we always talk about at the office. It is grace, and we spend a lot of our time on our knees to build what we've built. But if you talk about building practices of evidence-based practices, and it requires systematic and systemic change. And I want to first talk about institutional efforts, and I want to give some practical examples because in building the advising network, it started as a work stream in 2017. We were 7 institutions trying to figure out student success, and academic advising kept coming up, and a few of us were saying, we've tried this, let's try. And there was a collective agreement in those 7 voices. And I think that's where it started for the national space. But it went into the institutional spaces. And what this started translating to in the institutions is the institutions actually pausing and asking what Tim also narrated in his opening keynote. What are we doing and what are we defining as our efforts towards student success? And the notion of academic advising had received some prominence and having a definition through the Siyaphumelela workstream. And we took this definition back to our spaces and we started reflecting. And that resulted in us having a multiplier effect because the Siyaphumelela workstream was a catalytic space, but DHET heard the voice, it heard the plight, and it was generous to give us funding, catalytic funding to start this work. And to date, the Department of Higher Education has invested 40 million Rand in advancing the work of an evidence-based practice such as academic advising. And institutions went and sat around the tables, invited everyone around the table to reflect on what are we doing and how are we doing it. And the inclusion of the student narratives was the game changer because the student narratives started telling the story and where the gaps are. The institutional data also started adding to that voice in giving the clearer picture to say, to complement these voices of the students, to complement the voices of the practitioners, this is what the data is telling. And through the national work and the data work streams that were also in this space, it started amplifying this work. And the academic advising work stream is where it is because there's been a collective effort. And that has resulted in systematic and systemic change, not just in our institutions, but in DHET. And we're seeing this, as I've just indicated. So I think for me, in making that possible, it's really taken an invitation for everyone to be around the table. And speaking to what Francois and both Liz said, it requires a cultural shift and intentionality in the use of evidence, in the use of data to build the culture. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, tangible example of what it means to drive evidence-based student success offerings and practices that are scalable at a national level. There's a work stream that was initiated here at Siyaphumelela around mental health. And a colleague of mine from UWC participated because something was happening at home at UWC. The mental health policy was developed in such a way that it wasn't just, policy in the way that we knew it. It was engaged in the way that it was developed. The mentality and the drive was mental health of students and staff is the responsibility of all of us. It cannot be the responsibility of the center with psychologists, which are very few. You'll remember during Fees Must Fall, mental health was really elevated to very high as, one of those issues on our radar screen and one of those monsters that we had to deal with. So the work stream helped in bringing this type of practice of making sure that even when you do a mental health policy, you have to think about student success, put it at the center. You have to talk integration, where all the faculties and the departments in the institution have their share. So we are talking about the implementation of the policy from across the institution, not just in the center for student counseling. Every faculty has to design an implementation plan and share it at all the governance subcommittees of Senate and talk about where they are and talk about data. What is happening? Are you seeing shifts? Are you designing offerings that will bring the kind of shifts that we are talking about? And this allows, when you bring in more innovations, in an environment where you're already talking this level of integration, it becomes easy. At UWC, we added an offering around adopting an AI-based mental health chatbot. We didn't just throw this innovation, into the institution, but it was built inside this integrated mental health policy that is talking now implementation and moving into even evaluation. And from the beginning of even designing the mental health policy, we are talking professionals, psychologists and everybody else as scholar professionals who are doing their work informed by data. So even as we adopt innovations like AI-driven mental health chatbots, we are talking scholarship. We are using data to inform ourselves whether we are not just playing with these tools and whether we are really doing the work that is helping us to drive and to improve student success in the institution. And the data is telling us good stories, but also pushing us to keep on doing better. We are able to identify more areas where we need to put effort into in this integrated, interdependent way, because student success is now our focus. We are able to break silos. You cannot continue to do these things in your little areas of pockets. Another good example is our first year experience program. There have been a lot of things that were started in the institution, but because now we talk integration at this level, and we are talking about tutoring and mentoring, but we are also talking out of class engagements, taking close to 1,000 students on a movie night around a theme that is of concern, like AI or any climate change, and making sure that the discussions that they engage in are part of helping them to transition into higher education, but to see themselves as, global citizens being able to engage in this type of conversations even as they grow. So it is that integration that is helping us from policy development into designing offerings that talk to shifting the needle when it comes to improving success rates.
Thank you. Now, one of the very important roles that Siyaphumelela as a network has is to ensure that we have a range of services. And one of the important services that Siyaphumelela has offered from inception is the notion of having coaches from outside the institution working in the institution. All new partners of Siyaphumelela have the option of coaches. Some old ones have, or not old ones, but ones who've been there from the beginning, have then gone through some difficult times, and then they've asked again that they should have a coach to reignite the efforts at that institution. And Nthabiseng, if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenny, and good morning, everybody. So as Jenny says, I'm one of the national coaches. There are 7 of us. So the coaching journey of Siyaphumelela started some 5 years ago. And at the time, we drew on our experiences as senior member, having been senior leaders and managers in higher education. But over time, we have actually developed a contextually grounded coaching approach that I think is, uniquely South African. And what I'm going to present here, is collective work. So I want to acknowledge all my fellow coaches. It's not my own work alone. So what is that model? Is generative, which means that it focuses on growth, is human-centric, and I think we can say it's rooted in Ubuntu. It's also, it also, is relational accountability also, is transformative, it's informed by evidence and data, but we need to remember to continue to be deeply attuned to the human experience as we use the data. It's designed to empower institutional teams. And as a result, it has actually helped us to coach or lead or assist institutions with empathy, insight, and also strategic clarity. So if I were to summarize what our ethos is, we listen, we affirm, we question, we stimulate, and then we connect. So the biggest, and before I forget, I want to really appreciate our ATD colleagues that walked this journey with us. Then the question now is, how do we sustain this practice? And I think to deepen our work, we are already talking about launching a structured short course on coaching. And this is very important to now cultivate the next generation of coaches. So in this structured course, I would suggest that we have some form of shadowing so that those who are going to follow behind us can shadow some of us, who have some insight into the coaching already. Now, we work very closely with institutional leads at institutions. So I really think we need to focus on that role and maybe advise institutions firstly to say who should be an institutional lead and what are the criteria. And once the institutional leads are selected, I think it's very important that to recognize that they are coaches in their own right in the institutions. And we need to actually start embedding coaching as a leadership practice even within the institutions. Once again, for sustainability, I really think that we need co-leads. One of the biggest problems we've had with Siyaphumelela is that when a lead leaves an institution, they leave with all, the memory. So, in closing, I want to say that both for the institutional leads and for the coaches, we need to form a community of practice, have structured courses, and also have a repository or a platform for shared learning, reflection, and innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, coaching is a key service, and it has, I think, had enormous benefit to all of our institutions. So thank you very much, Nthabiseng. But now I'd just like to ask Gugu to reflect on some of the other services that Siyaphumelela has offered. Yes.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'm going to reflect on a Siyaphumelela service that is 8 years old. And it has also in this conference come up as a golden thread, I want to say, and that's academic advising. Siyaphumelela services that academic advising short learning programs fall under is under the workshop services. And again, taking from what I spoke to earlier, as a collective, we identified that there's this practice, but there's no identity linked to that practice. And there was the establishment of this short learning program. It's an accredited short learning program to capacitate academic advisors, whether you're an academic development practitioner or student success coach. If you are someone that works with students, we identified this as a pathway of developing and giving identity to one. And what the AAPD, as we call it, has enabled over its 8 years of existence is it's trained over 450 individuals across the country. We've serviced 23 of the 26 institutions. But what we have seen come up in the institutions is whether at faculty level, departmental level, or even at an institutional level, there's a voice that is starting to come up for collaboration, integration. And one thing we've neglected for a long time is coordination. So academic advising, in my reflection as a Siyaphumelela service and a workshop, has enabled a space for coordination at institutional level, at faculty level, at departmental level, that we talk about student success through a shared voice. But what it's also enabled is the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It's enabled that. It has invited different stakeholders around the table. For those that have completed that have not completed the AAPD, you're required to reflect on who you collaborate with, what kind of data, what kind of technology you integrate into your practice. And you, at the end of the 4 days, you compile a portfolio of evidence, and that portfolio of evidence is actually intended to be a blueprint for participants to go and use it in their institutions. So we've used this service to actually be our voice and carry out the mandate for institutions to frame their work in a shared space, but also to enhance collaboration. So the work that Siyaphumelela has played in this specific service is that it's played a critical role in coordinating us annually as a collective from different institutions, 2 participants per institution, to collaborate and share our experiences. Because at the end of the 4 days, everyone walks away with a take-home note, whether it's from Walter Sisulu, whether it's from Sefako Makgato or UFS or UP or UJ, any of the network institutions. You walk away with some insight that you can either take and adopt and adapt for your environment, or just rehaul everything and bring more people along with you in these efforts. So this service, I think, for me, has also been something critical. And I think, borrowing from Nthabiseng's words, is it's created a community, it's created an identity, and it's created a collective effort in advancing these practices that contribute to student success. Thanks.
Thank you. So I hope by now you've got some idea of all the building blocks of Siyaphumelela to create this edifice. But as we move forward, and as we have very painfully learned from other parts of the world, one can build something, but it also can fall down. And as we face some of the big opportunities, some of the big challenges as we move ahead, I'm going to ask Nthabiseng and Francois just to speak about how we, what those challenges might be and how we can sustain what we have developed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I'm going to talk about how I believe we should actually sustain our efforts locally. Then I'll go internationally. Now, as Siyaphumelela, I think we've made huge strides, in terms of access and success. But I don't want us to forget that inequities remain. And one of the big ones is transition from basic education to university. The other one, which I'm very passionate about, is the TVET sector. So I would like to just point out a few promising models, and I must declare that the first one I have a personal interest. So the Pre-University Academy at the University of Pretoria, I think, is doing a lot of good work. And thank you very much, Bill, for giving us funding for that. And I would like to acknowledge my colleagues here from the PUA. They have, presented some nice papers. And I think, Professor Mthembu, I don't know whether he's still here, presented a very good approach. The Durban University of Technology, then University of KwaZulu-Natal, I think is also, doing some good work. So these three institutions, if they could come together the same way we came together to bring this, to start this movement, I think we could really go far, in closing that gap. Nelson Mandela University, I think I came across some of their work where they are working with TVET colleges. So I would like to see that, probably, improved. Now within universities, I think the senior executive is on board, but I'm personally concerned about the deans and deputy deans. I don't think we're doing enough to bring them on board. An example from, one of the universities in New Zealand, Victoria University at Wellington, the deputy dean is here, or former deputy dean. She has been seconded to be an institutional lead. So that's very important. I'll not talk much about elevating the student voice. I'm very happy with elevating the student voice, but they should also co-create. Then data accessibility is a problem because some institutions really, there's inequity there also. Then I want to go lastly to global collaboration. I think that we shouldn't forget that student success is a global imperative. So international partnerships like with the ATD have actually enriched our own experiences. And Georgia State Tim Rennick was here, and we know that he has enriched a lot of the practices in our university. And I've already said the coaching practice was influenced by the ATD. Now I'm involved in New Zealand. I wish I wouldn't talk about myself, but I will because that's how it is. So I'm involved in New Zealand, and there are parallels between New Zealand and South Africa and Australia. And there's a lot to learn in with those institutions. So I think Siyaphumelela institutions, and I want to acknowledge my colleagues here from New Zealand, Professor Moran from UC, Kaylin Sampson also from University of Canterbury, and also Karen Smith. They have had an amazing time in South Africa, visiting different institutions, but they've made deep connections here, and they are going to start collaborating. So we need to look at that. Then together with, Ansila, I don't think Ansila is here. Ansila Yar. We are members of a global movement called the Global Forum for Student Success. We have been meeting very quietly for 5 years, but I think we are ready to launch either this year or next year. And I learned in that forum that many other countries have Siyaphumelela type programs. And it would be very interesting for us to understand what Hungary is doing in student success. And for example, as an example, what about Portugal? And many other countries, I think we should be thinking about that. I'm going to stop there, Jenny. I think my time is gone.
Thank you very much. And finally, last word from Francois.
Okay, thank you very much. I think in terms of challenges, I'll talk at a policy level. I think, given Tandi's inputs in this conversation, we need to be engaged, senior leadership of universities, into earmark grants, grants that are allocated to support student success. Those grants are under threat, and I think that's a policy imperative we need to look at, because Siyaphumelela has been the catalytic funding, the funding that's been able to scale many of the initiatives that we've heard of in this conference, has been those grants. I think that's absolutely critical for quality, equity, and social justice in our system. We have to develop a new generation of academic developers, educational developers, and higher education researchers. That's why I get teary when I see all of you, because we have a heap of talent in front of us. But I think we need to be intentional about how that happens. And I do think when I get to the opportunities, obviously these two things are linked. And then I think we need to show various stakeholders, and I want to link up to what Nthabiseng has said. Those stakeholders are not only higher education. It's fantastic. We had our first conversation with other foundations and business in South Africa, but that goes into our global networks as well. The stronger we make those human connections, the more powerful the message will become that this is the way you create stable societies, very strong democracies, and that one should keep investing in this space. And I want to link to the opportunities that I think you can always link these two things, because you never waste a crisis. You make use of it. I think there is a couple of things that one needs to focus on. In South Africa, in the public system, the majority of our students is from quintile 1 to 3. This is an historic opportunity for us to be the escalator of social mobility for our largest part of our country and to address inequality and poverty. It is an historic moment. So if you're part of this conversation and you're in this hall, historic moments don't come with a placard. You're in it. And we can make a massive difference. We have a massive pool of talented people, young people, at heart, more experienced people, less experienced people, people that have been deeply committed, have been doing this year work for many, many decades. We can draw on all that talent and develop a new generation, whether that's through the Pathways initiatives in Siyaphumelela, through workshops at institutions. It is the sheer array of development opportunities that Siyaphumelela offers now versus when we started the first 5 institutions is completely incomparable. It's exponential growth. You can literally, I was wonderful to hear the Northwest colleague saying he's going into student success. There are those opportunities for you. I think we need to create very creative social partnerships. This is at a policy level again. Do we look at social innovation spaces examples, impact bonds? Do we look at how we work very closely with bursary providers. We had wonderful inputs in the sessions where Russell Davies joined us from the Bursary Forum. So that bringing us together. And then we at the University of the Free State have evidence now that if you do proactive advising, your return on investment is 1 to 4. We've got the data. So for every R1 million you spend in subsidy optimization, you will get R4 million in return. Right? So that is a confirmation, just like Prof. Ogude said, of what our international colleagues are doing. And then the last point, Jenny, we have a choice as South Africans to play into the narrative, and South Africans are very good with a negative narrative. We can choose as a group to recognize what we've built through Fees Must Fall, through COVID, look at what we've created, and we can choose to build something even greater.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a moment to ask if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask of our very experienced, full of depth panel. Any questions? Right over there. We've got all the microphones here.
Testing 1, 2. Good level from UNISA again, the most talkative university at this conference this week. Thanks for the panel discussion. I think it's given great context about what the initiative is all about. And I think we are all still here because we buy in fully. But I think one of the things we've been talking about within the team is that we need to introspect and really reflect on all our efforts. It's all good to reflect on all the positive. But I'd love to know from all of you, what has not worked? Okay. I mean, there must be some areas where you've tried something, put money in something, and it just has not worked with. It's important that you share that with us so that we understand where we might, what we might need to look out for. So I'd love to get some feedback about that. Thanks.
One other question, I think, is probably all we have time for. Anybody else? Okay. Panel. Francois, I saw you nodding your head. Anybody else?
I think I was saying actually just before we started talking that we weren't fast enough with creating the Siyaphumelela Scholars Program. We should have done that earlier, and I'm so glad we got to get to do it. So I think in terms of something that I think we should have done earlier that has a massive catalytic impact, that's something we need to do. If you want to know mistakes, I think you'll have, we can come to me, I'll talk to you about how many we've made. I think a mistake that Jenny mentioned it in the beginning. When we started, people underestimated the vulnerability that sharing data requires and the trust. It took us long to get there. I think respective institutions were more or less willing to share. And if there's a lesson I can say from that, I think it's very important that one has the courage to say, your dashboard is fantastic, ours is nowhere near to it. We had a workshop session actually with our Canterbury colleagues. We were talking in our institutions about where we are in different spaces. So that sharing is something that if you don't get it right from the beginning, especially in your institution, the student success work goes nowhere. The silos win. And so I can see he's already scratching his head about, hey, how are we going to tackle that one?
Let me just add. I don't think, what I'm talking about is where we have failed, but what is a big challenge? I think the biggest challenge is about leadership. There are institutions where we've tried, and if leadership is not on board, nothing will help. And it's not about a leader talking about student success, it's also the passion behind it. If you don't have the passion, you can never. The second thing is student success is a long journey. So don't think that things will change immediately. Those of you who are in leadership positions, you are not doing it for yourselves. You are doing it for those who come after you. So I just want to say, if the change is slow, you are actually, doing for other generations. Thank you very much.
An area where I think, our success and effort is being questioned is around financial wellness, financial exclusions, student debt, and all the intersections with those factors towards our completion and completion on time, completion rates. There is some work that needs to be done. And the scholar from VETS articulated it very well. Our students and student leaders are saying no student who has the potential should be driven away from higher education. But then the finances is a big issue. And we end up with this large data around student debt and how it can, throw the ship off its sail. So that's an area where we need to pay attention. And I was saying to the Free State colleagues, we should be looking at financial advising and transfer our good conceptual understanding from academic advising into financial advising. And this is part of it is just financial literacy, but it goes way beyond it. Financial advising, financial wellness within the higher education sector in South Africa at this stage with our economic challenges is an area that needs serious attention.
Thank you.
Just a quick one, Jenny. I think for me, in answering Nkululeko, the other thing that I think we've had a taste of, but we've not really tapped into is student success. We've looked at the moments of admission, progression, transition, and everything. But I think we've also not gotten right what happens to the students post that. Saldra has done some studies, looked at the NSFAS students, what's their employability like and the profile. But I think we just need to take it one step beyond to look at the first 2 years post-graduation, what that success has really translated to in the system. Thanks.
I would like you all to put your hands together and pay tribute to our amazing panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you. Don't go away yet. I'm sure somebody's going to take a photograph of you. You can't escape so lightly. Okay, let me join you. I've got one last word. I wanted to say on behalf of Siyaphumelela, we live in difficult, uncertain, sometimes dark environment at the moment. But here in Siyaphumelela, we have built an extraordinary community. And as we move forward, let Siyaphumelela be an inspiring, responsive, courageous, intentional, and bright light in the next period. Thank you. That's okay. Right, we go on to our last session, which is, I think, Innocent and Ashton are coming to the stage, and Ephraim. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very much. Yeah.
Oh, you got
have
one.
them already.
Did I need another one? Have it.
Good. Should I start? Thank you very much, everyone. And as we draw towards the end of the event, I would like to request all of you, as usual, to respond to the conference evaluation. The link and the QR code should be on the screens. We really value feedback, your feedback. Whenever we start planning the Siyaphumelela conferences, we draw on feedback from the previous conference. So please do respond to the evaluation. It's a very short instrument, mostly multiple choice of questions where you just tick the box, and just one or two where you put just a sentence or a phrase. If all of you could respond to the evaluation, we would be most grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll also share it with you next week along with the conference recordings. So a little bit of housekeeping. We have lunch. The lunch is a packed lunch for everybody located in the foyer. So you're welcome to grab your lunch and go. For those of you who are traveling through Sadie and organized through Sadie, the shuttles will be from the Khotla venue over here. We do have some luggage over here. If your luggage is up at reception, please just ask the driver to go via reception and pick up your luggage from there. There's no need to walk up there, get your luggage, and then walk all the way back. I think everyone's got their steps in for this conference. For those of you, if you haven't checked out, you can check out with Maureen and leave your keys with your room card key with Maureen. If you have hesitancy around which shuttles you're meant to be on for our sponsored delegates, please speak to Maureen and Sissy and they'll be able to help you. And then lastly, Durban University of Technology is going to be having a debrief session. So if you're a DUT delegate, please can you meet in the back corner immediately after the conference for a short little debrief. Thanks very much, and I'm now going to hand over to Innocent and Bill. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh yeah, we want to finish it on high energy.